Good afternoon and welcome to the Wednesday webinar series. And today, on behalf of Madison College's School of Protection, I got to remember what school I'm working for today. School Professional and Adult Continuing Education. We're going to be doing a webinar on bullying in the workplace. I'm glad you can join us. If this is your first webinar with us, just a couple things of housekeeping. In the center portion of your screen, if you use your mouse, you'll see a bunch of circles. The first circle to the left on the lower part of your center part of your screen is the microphone. The next is the camera. You're more than welcome to activate your mic and camera if you do have a question. Uh, and you will also see that there is a chat bubble, a little dialogue bubble there that you can throw a chat in that will appear on the right-hand side of your screen. So if there is a question, you can feel free to chat it as well. We will have time at the end of the webinar to discuss any questions that you have or to share any ideas that you have as well. With that, let's get going here. Thank you for being here and for logging in with us today. And obviously, bullying is a tricky subject because you're dealing with bullies. How do you deal with bullies? Well, we're going to talk about that. If you've been through a webinar with me before, you know who I am. A full-time faculty member. I split my time between criminal justice and the School of Professional and Adult Continuing Education, where I do a lot of business training for the college. I served in law enforcement for 19 years. I was an elected official both at the county and municipal level. I have a master's in public administration, and I have a lot of specialty in dealing with threats, workplace violence issues, preparation for critical incidents in the workplace, and so on and so forth. Worked as a consultant, as an expert, as a trainer, and you name it, regarding these issues. I have been involved in a lot, and I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn a lot. And that's what I'm really excited about, to share some of the things that I've learned with Madison College and our stakeholders that are out there. All right, so what are some of the objectives that we're going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to spend a little time about defining bullying and what I like to describe as direct and indirect bullying. How to identify when bullying is occurring, because sometimes as a decision maker or a manager, you may not always know when it's occurring, so what to look for. How to handle bullies, which I think that is probably going to be where maybe most of you might have a lot of questions or looking for answers. How to treat victims of bullying and creating that bully-free culture in your workplace. And lastly, it's time for question and answers. So, all right. So first off, before I really get into the heart of what I kind of define as direct and indirect bullying, let's talk about what bullying is defined as. So you can kind of read over this, but a couple of things, I mean, I think we kind of all know what bullying is when it's obvious, but it's also when it's maybe not so obvious that we don't know if it's bullying or if it's childish behavior or if it's friendly competition and all of that. Okay, so the OSHA has its own definition of what bullying is, and then there's kind of a general definition that occurs as well. And one thing that I think we really need to focus on is the term, the general definition of the unbalanced power. Okay, is that that someone is trying to create an unbalanced power within the organization, and that will probably help you to determine whether or not this is truly bullying or if this is just something that is maybe a fluke incident or somebody just attempting to be funny or maybe somebody just having a bad day. Okay, so remember that unbalanced power, because that seems to kind of creep its way up there a lot, is what there's some underlying motives involved in the progression of bullies. But really, when we talk about direct and indirect, it's pretty simple. Okay, direct bullying it's right to your face. I mean, it's there. The person's right there. They're doing things. They're saying things to you. But they also could be looks of intimidation. They could be what the person says, well, I was just joking around with them, geez, I was just teasing them. Okay, what they view is humor, but it's more than offensive humor, or maybe inappropriate humor, but it's continual. It's that imbalance of power, is that their way of bullying is trying to make it seem fun or funny. So you have that direct sense. You can also have things like exclusion, where they say, hey, let's have a team meeting about this. Yeah, you don't need to be here. Okay, we don't need to hear from you. Or maybe there's a roundtable discussion, and somebody's ideas are constantly being talked over or discounted or overshadowed. Okay, again, that somebody's creating that imbalance of power that is a predominant characteristic of bullying. So we have those direct forms of bullying, which I think are probably more classic forms of bullying. But then we have those indirect forms of bullying as well, and that's when the aggressor is not really there, but the actions or the presence is still felt by the victim. And that could be through things like, well, emails and social media. It can also include be things that might be in like a business report or a progress report of some form. Could be in continual complaints against the other person or the employee. Could be by that the aggressor also develops what I would call the peer gang mentality. That peer gang mentality of that, even though I'm not here, I'm going to get other people to do my dirty work for me when I am not here. Okay. And then you also have things like rumors. I'm going to start a rumor about this person and try to float things around this person's back. Now, I want to kind of circle back as to the definition and really why are we really here talking about this? Well, for two main reasons. Okay. Number one, nobody likes to be bullied, and nobody really should be bullied. I mean, come on. Okay, it's we're talking about bullying in a workplace too. This isn't a third grade playground, right? We're talking about professional settings where people are supposed to be getting paid to do work, not to bully other people, right? So that's kind of the obvious thing. The second thing is that bullying will lead to workplace violence if it's not unchecked. And we can look at all the different case studies of active shooters. We can look at all the different case studies of workplace violence, and a predominant boiling point is bullying in the workplace. Okay, and another part of that is when a bully is reprimanded in the workplace and then wants to retaliate, which is going to go back to our discussion a little bit later on about how do we deal with bullies. So what are some of the roots of workplace bullying? Well, number one, sexual harassment. Bullying is a form of sexual harassment, and vice versa. A person who, again, might have a juvenile mentality. That's the way that they show that they might like somebody, is by continually to kind of tease them or joke around with them, or on the flip side, a person who's trying to show that they are better than another person or better than an opposite sex by always trying to keep them down, by trying to create that imbalance of power. Biases are another root of workplace bullying. Don't have to really kind of go too deep into explaining that. I think that's you kind of understand that the different cultures and races and religions and sexual orientations and things like that. Not everybody at your workplace is always going to agree to somebody's own behaviors or cultures, and therefore they might decide to take it out through an act of bullying. I also want to make one comment real quick, is that I might have heard like a chat message. I can't see my chat box right now, so if you do chat a question or anything in there, I will get to it, but I'm looking at kind of the full screen of presentation right now, so just bear with me if you did throw a question up there. Power struggles or pecking orders Okay, I got backyard chickens, so I know a lot about pecking orders. Okay, I also was a canine handler, so I know a lot about pack mentality. And I understand how those work in a survival animal kingdom instinct, but it also kind of works when that animalistic instinct is now brought into a workplace, and those people view their workplace as a form of their own survival. And maybe that's even subconsciously. So they will try to establish pecking orders, again, creating that unbalance of power to try to keep a person down or try to keep a person at bay or not exclude a person or include a person in certain things to show more power and dominance over that person. And then also we have competition and jealousy. And really a lot of good things that managers like to do could end up creating this culture of too much competition. Now, I am a very, very competitive person. I played sports, I was in law enforcement, um, a lot of things that I do, I want to succeed at. And if somebody challenges me, I want to rise to that level. If somebody said, "Hey Brian, we're holding a competition, and if you do this, you can win these prizes." Well, yeah, let me at it, right? Well, what am I willing to do to win that prize? Well, I think most people will probably do what's reasonable, ethical, moral, and legal to do what they need to do to try to put their best foot forward and win the prize. But as we know, other people will resort to other things, and sometimes bullying is one of those things that's going to happen because they see the competitor in the workplace being their barrier, their obstacle to getting that prize. So as management is providing reward levels, incentives, I've even heard, management providing, vacations and sales incentives and quotas and things like that, which is all meant to drive up the business and the marketplace and all well and good. Realize that could also be creating pockets of bullying on the floor. So something to kind of watch out for. So when is bullying occurring? Well, some of it you're gonna just kind of know because you see it, you hear it. Okay, you're in the office, you're in you're out on the floor, you're out on the factory, wherever you're working. You see it going on. Okay, or you hear it going on. You might also read it. Okay. Maybe you read it in reports or complaints about another person. There could be something that you just sense it. I mean, if you're a parent and if you know that your kid had a bad day at school, you sense it. So what do? You prod your kid for information. What happened? I mean, my daughter has been bullied at school. She's a special needs child, and sometimes people don't, understand. Uh, and she's a target of being bullied. And there are days when she could come home at school and she tries to put on her best face and say nothing's going wrong or nothing has gone wrong, but you just know something's up. So you sense it, okay? You sense it, you feel it, or you are informed through somebody else or maybe even through the victim of bullying. Either way, no matter how you know bullying is occurring, you have to create avenues so that bullying can be reported. And you have to create a culture that bullying is not tolerated as well. And you also have to be diligent in following up on any type of potential bullying, suspected or confirmed. Okay? And that is so that we can create this overall culture where everybody understands. That's one of the biggest questions that I get asked is, and we're going to get to it. How do you deal with the bullies? We know who they are, but how do you deal with them? Well, you create a culture that gives them an opportunity to adapt to the culture or get out of the culture. That's pretty much their two options. And maybe they don't really realize what they're doing is bullying. Maybe you get a new employee, and in the world that I came from or grew up in law enforcement, as when I was a rookie, was I hazed? Was I teased? Was I given all the crappy assignments and everything? Yeah, but what do they call that? Well, they call that, you're earning your due, or you're proving your might. Well, I can understand part of it because I need experience and all that stuff, but about being hazed or being called rookie or being kept down and stuff like that, I mean, that stuff's old school. I mean, we don't do those things anymore. But if that's still allowed to flourish in an organization, where you know that some of that stuff is going on, and you're just like, they always pick on the new person a little bit. Well, is that part of that overall culture? I understand that there's that animalistic pecking order, okay? But if we allow that pecking order or that culture to flourish, what are we doing? We're teaching those new people it's okay to act like that. We're teaching those experienced people it's okay to act like that. And where do we draw the line? It's okay to pick on a new person, but don't pick on the person with 5 or 15 or 20 years experience, or don't pick on the manager or the owner. That's a no-no. But only pick on the new people. And what do we tell the new people? You're new, so you're going to get picked on. You're going to get teased. You're going to get, we're going to test you. And that occurs in so many different cultures in the private world that it's counterintuitive to what we want to create, which is an ultimate bully-free environment. So most likely, I would be willing to bet that most managers don't have their heads in the sand. They know bullying is going on, but yet they have barriers. They don't want to call it bullying because then they might have a problem, or then they're labeling somebody as a bully, or they don't want to address it because they just want it to go away, so they don't have to discipline somebody, so they don't have to do an investigation, and that they can present that, hey, these are just things that have to be worked out. I don't know how many times that I've heard, well, it's a personality difference. It's a personality difference that a person is causing harm to another person by picking on them, by teasing them, by littling them, by starting rumors against them, by making it so that they cry every day they want to come to work, they have to come to work. That's not a personality difference. That's bullying. Okay. So we have to recognize when bullying is occurring, and then how do we handle those bullies? Okay. Well, I have 6 rules for how to establish how to kind of handle bullies, and all of the presentation I'm presenting today is being recorded. You will get a copy of the recording as well. So if you want to share it with anybody, or if you want to kind of go over these things in the future, you can. So number 1, establish policies that prohibit it. All right. It's like traffic laws. If if somebody gave me the keys to the car and they said, go ahead and drive around, and if I want 90 miles an hour down the street because I felt that that was okay, I felt, hey, that's just me. I just like going 90 miles an hour. Well, there's laws that say you can't do those things, right? For the safety of everybody and so on and so forth. Well, we need to have the same kind of thing at work. So we need to have those laws, those policies that prohibit bullying and give examples of what bullying is. You can't just say, this is a bully-free workplace. Again, I don't know how many times I walked into an employer's area and I've gone into their break rooms or their training rooms or anything. They have their little signs on bully-free workplace or bully-free school. Well, signs don't work. If signs worked, state troopers would never write traffic tickets. And if you know a state trooper, they live to write traffic tickets, right? So signs don't work, okay? But cultures do. So have a culture that is supported through policy. Why? Because it's going to lead to number 6, that if it leads to serious or consistent actions, we have the tool, the policy, i.e. the law, to enforce punishment, okay? So number 1 is establish those policies. Number 2 is establish your own authority. Show that you are a confident leader. Show that you don't bully other people and you don't expect other people to be bullied either. if you act, walk the walk, talk the talk about an anti-bullying culture, that's going to be appreciated and respected more. But if you say, hey, the policy says this, but you kind of, go along with some of the games, or you might, turn the other cheek on certain things, or try to let, those personality differences play out, that's not establishing your own authority. So establish your own authority. Plus, the bully might try to placate you into seeing what he or she in their perspective. Come on, I was just kidding. Or, hey, they're not pulling their weight, so I was just giving them some, I was just razzing them a little bit to kind of get them fired up and things like that. They're trying to say that they're on your side, that they're doing a favor for you. Okay? But then you're giving them power by doing that. And again, these are people that typically want to have power. You're only giving them more power by doing that. Power that they're going to probably go back to their own social or employee network and say, oh yeah, I went and talked to the boss and manager, and they don't have a problem with it. I told them what's going on. You're just empowering them. I'm not telling you to belittle them or anything else like that, but establish your own authority. Establish that the rules that you have created in your workplace, that you are going to be the enforcer of those rules, and that you expect a certain level of performance and professionalism, and they better deliver upon it. 3, investigate thoroughly. And that goes back to how to identify things. Whether we hear it, see it, sense it, get it reported, investigate it thoroughly. Make sure that you do a good job, or assign a person to do a good job to find out what is going on. Now, these might be tough obstacles to overcome, especially if you're trying to create that culture in the workplace. We might have to start investigating employees for conduct or words or actions that previously they've been ignored or never looked into before. But we're going to be moving towards a new culture. We're going to be moving towards a place in which there's a certain level of expectation. So not only do we provide those victims or potential victims with a more comfortable and progressive workplace, but we're also making sure that we lead to that ultimate goal, that we're not going to have a workplace violence incident based over a bullying incident. So investigate these actions thoroughly. Ask questions. Sit down. Have a one-to-one conversation with a potential victim or witness and the offender. Goes to rule number 4. Having corrective action, and then make sure that you follow that up with training and expectations. I'm not saying that every bully has to be fired, because there's probably a lot of bullies or people that have done things that could be construed as bullying that are probably very good employees. Maybe they just took a joke too far. Maybe they said something that they shouldn't. Maybe they were just having a string of bad days or bad time in their life. Whatever the case may be, I'm not saying that we just terminate all bullies, but we make sure that we put forth a corrective action followed by training and meeting future expectations. We basically give them a guide to say, if you want to continue working here, we've identified that there's a problem. We're going to provide some training about the problem or assistance with the problem, and then we have these other levels of expectations for you, that this won't be a continued problem. And again, that also helps to establish your authority. You're the one calling the shots, not them. Number 5, document the complaint and the remediation. A lot of the documentation ends with the complaint. We got the complaint, we looked into it, we took some steps, or we did this, and that's what we did. Okay. Well, where's all that paperwork to show what you've done? Well, we don't have anything. Okay. Well, where's the complaint? Well, somebody told me about it. Okay. Somebody said, hey, the new person's getting bullied, so we looked into it. Okay. Well, did you write a report about that? Did you document anything? Did you record the dates and times and locations of when you did sit down and talk to the victim or witnesses or anything else like that? You want to show that you treated this very seriously. Because if it does lead to a termination, or if it does lead to a potential act of violence or retaliation or something like that, you're producing records to show that your employer who you represent took proper steps to mitigate these things. And also with this, understand that don't have a culture or mentality that if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So somebody comes to you and says, hey boss, I got a problem here. So on the third shift, we hired a bunch of new people, and one of them is really getting picked on by the group, and they're hazing them, and they hid his car keys the other day, and he couldn't find them for a long time, and they sabotaged his equipment, so he couldn't get to work right away and stuff like that. Okay, well, tell them that if they have a problem, they could come in and see me, and they're gonna have to write it down. Okay, who wants to be that person? Who's going to come in at a potential brand new employer and say, I'm going to write down a bunch of complaints about my fellow employees? To a manager, I don't know if I can trust yet. Or even if this person's been a long time employee there, who's going to say, well, I'm going to put something in writing that's going to rock the boat? Nobody wants to do that. Don't force them to do that. Who should be keeping records? Management should be keeping records. You can keep a record of a conversation that you had. You don't have to force them to put it out in writing. By doing that, you're creating a culture of saying, don't ask, don't tell. Because they're not going to tell you, and you're not going to end up asking about it. So don't force people to generate written reports in order for an investigation to be launched. It's kind of like, again, dealing with your children, dealing with a close friend or anybody that you really love and care for. If they're having a problem, you're not going to say, hey, put it in writing and then I'll talk to you about it. No. Be a human being. Talk to them about it, address it, and then do what you need to do based upon the policies that you create. And rule number 6, which a lot of HR people might have problems with, if it's serious or consistent, terminate. Get rid of them. Trust me. Okay. I've terminated people in law enforcement, and law enforcement is probably one of the most difficult professions to terminate people in. As they say, hire slow, fire fast. And I know that some people don't like that terminology, and yes, there are people that might turn around and say, well, it's a wrongful termination and so on and so forth. But if you have done 1 through 5 correctly, you have all the documentation in the world to show that you did the right thing. And they won't have a leg to stand on. Okay? If you decide that, well, based upon a rumor, based upon one incident, I'm just going to terminate them and be done with it, and you don't have anything in place to back you up in the records of what you've done and the steps you've taken to thoroughly investigate and find out the problems and the actions and so on and so forth, then yeah, you might have a problem. But if you do follow rules 1 through 5, and if it's serious or consistent, terminate. Get rid of the problem. Okay? Then this is a person who is not just having a bad day or just trying to joke around with somebody. This is a person who is a bully. And this is a person that's going to continue to be a bully and will train other people to be bullies as well. So get rid of them. All right. How do you aid your victims? Well, again, with the same establishment of policies to have a no bully tolerance, or tolerance for no bullying, establish policies that support people. Tell them, if something is going on, come in and talk to a manager. And no, you're not going to be required to write a report. Just by simply talking to a manager, we will listen. We will investigate. We will decide what is the best course of action. Okay. So by doing that, you're going to be encouraging reporting. You're not going to wait for that report again to come in. If you sense things, you're going to also have to empower your managers and your employees to say, if you see something, you too have to speak up. There's an expectation here. Again, these are things that might be a little bit difficult, especially if you're throwing this right at an organization that maybe has never had these things before. But in essence, as time goes on, this is going to become the norm. And if you do things right, and if you have these processes in place and these policies in place, you're not going to have a problem, because it's a culture. It's something that people know when they go into that. This is not tolerated. These things are looked at, you know, with everybody in this organization, to be something that we don't tolerate. Okay, and it's not to say you can't have a good time. It's not to say you can't have some fun. It's not to say that you can't joke around with somebody. Okay, those things are always going to happen, and camaraderie in a workplace is a good thing. It provides stress relief, but when it becomes offensive, when it becomes potentially injurious to a person, when it becomes consistent, when it shows that unbalance of power, that's when things are going too far. Okay, stress that it's for the victim that it's not their fault. Okay, but you're also not going to coddle them. You're not going to watch over them. You're not going to say, "Well, I'm going to protect you now. I'm the manager. I'm the supervisor. I'm going to protect you now." Okay, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to make sure that you empower the employee to say, it's not your fault. And what happened here is a failure of the system that we have in place, or a failure of a person or persons here, which is not normal for us. So we're going to look into this, and we're going to address it. And keep them abreast of what you're doing. Okay. You might have to provide a mentor. And you all probably have identified those informal leaders that you have in your workplace. Assign them as a mentor for them. It could be a very informal, quiet mentor. It's not like they have to sit next to them and go through training all over again, but provide them to be kind of an extra set of eyes and ears out in the floor, or out on the factory, or in the office, wherever the case may be. But also somebody that they can talk to, and somebody to kind of maybe help them get their own self-esteem and empowerment back up, so that they can show confidence again. And always, you're not a counselor. So if they're having a lot of issues about this, if it's really affecting them and impacting them, things like that, provide your services of an EAP. So don't try to turn your issue of investigating, having an unbiased investigation and determination of what you should do and how you should deal with the bully, and how you can provide aid to the victim. Don't turn this into a counseling session. Offer the EAP services, or services that you might have contracted with. If they want to avail themselves of that, they can. But don't become a counselor to them. Making your plan part of your culture. Okay, so how do we create that culture? Again, it starts with the attitude of you, the leaders, the decision makers, that certain things are not going to be tolerated. That a culture is going to be created, that policies are going to be enforced, that you're exercising your authority over the policies and over the workplace to make sure that everybody does what they're supposed to do, of getting paid to do a job safely and in a professional environment. You can seek that help from informal leaders, not only to provide a mentor, but also bring them in. If this is something that you're going to be throwing out there, say, listen, we need policies, we need training. We have a sense that there's some things going on here. As managers, we have a sense that there's some things that are going on here that we just don't like. We can't put maybe our finger on all of it, but we can tell there's probably some bullying going on here. And before we have an active shooter, or somebody getting in a fist fight or something we've got to put a stop to this. We'll find some of those informal leaders and bring them into the planning of your culture change, and say, what's best of going about this? Get buy-in from them. More people are going to follow a leader than a bully. So get buy-in from them, so that when they could go back out into the production floor, or the office, or into the medical rooms, or whatever, they're also carrying that message. Again, establishing those policies and training on them, and customizing those policies to make sure that they're yours. It's your language. It's your people. It's your buildings. We can find a lot of different policies that are out there, and we can plagiarize them, okay, to create our own policies. I mean, let's face it. I mean, that's very common in business. It's very common in law enforcement. Is that, hey, you got a policy on that? Let me see it. I'm going to switch it around a little bit, add some of my stuff to make it my policy, and that's all fine and dandy if that person's willing, or organization is willing to share that policy with you. No sense trying to reinvent the wheel all over again, but make sure that those policies are not just boilerplate policies. Make sure that they're customized to you so that they have a better impact. So they do feel for the potential victims that, hey, they take this serious. And so the bullies know, okay, this isn't just some policy like that sign up on the wall that says bully-free environment. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Self-assess your own actions. What humor have you used? What exclusions? What behaviors have you tolerated? Have you turned the other cheek? Have you ignored certain things? Have you even potentially been fearful of dealing with a potential bully because you might feel that they could become violent? I tell you right now, if you have that feeling about a person, well, that's your instincts going off and saying that this person most likely can be violent. And you should probably seek some more professional assistance and consulting in getting that person removed from your workplace. Okay. Praise acts of goodwill. When a person does something else, instead of just disciplining when somebody does something bad, when you see that your employees are helping each other and doing things that benefit the company, praise that and document it. We're awful quick as managers to document the bad stuff. Document the good stuff too. Okay. You might have a disciplinary form, but do you have a commendation form? Do you have, an attaboy or an attagirl form, or something that when they do something good? It's not that we're providing those rewards for competition. We're providing rewards for goodwill. And then reward teamwork. Instead of having an individual goal, have an entire shift goal or an entire organization goal. And yeah, maybe it's going to cost you a little bit more in today's day and age, and we don't want to think about cost, but it might even not even cost you a dime. And just saying, hey, you guys reached your goal. We're really proud of you. I had a chief once who said, I had an issue where I brought a commendation to one of my officers. I was a lieutenant, and I brought a commendation to one of my officers to put in the chief's in the personnel file. And the chief looked at it and he goes, "Why are we giving this officer a commendation?" I said, "Well, because the officer did this. I mean, it's all right there." He goes, "Geez, Landers." He goes, "You got to understand." He goes, "All these commendations." He said, and not that I was giving commendations out like candy, but I praised my officers. But one thing he said is, which would you rather have? A paycheck or a pat in the ass? And I said, well, geez, Chief, neither of them cost you a dime. You don't pay me out of your own pocket. And giving somebody a pat on the butt for doing a good job, that's free. So while we can recognize some individual achievements, it's also critical to recognize group or team achievements as well, because then we reduce that competitive level. They could be competitive, but they're being competitive as a group against outside competition or against numbers, things that are really meaningless inside in personality differences or just different personnel that you have. All right, so just a reminder of some of our services that we have, all these different fun things. We do provide on-site consulting and assistance and policy generation and training and so on and so forth. We have some other interesting free webinars coming up. So coming up in a couple of weeks, we have workplace violence, which we're going to talk more about the different types of workplace violence, including active shooters, restarting a small business, domestic violence in the workplace, and evacuation and sheltering procedures. So all of these will be being sent out. I know our school has all of your emails, so they will be sending out those notices as well. And also here is my phone number and email if you do have any questions that are not addressed right now.